Colonial Pipeline, headquartered in Alpharetta, Georgia, is the largest U.S. refined products pipeline system and can carry more than 3 million barrels of gasoline, diesel and jet fuel between the U.S. Gulf Coast and the New York Harbor area. The company was founded in 1961 and construction of the pipeline began in 1962. P.19 to 20 The pipeline is 5,500 miles long. Colonial had 7 spills in 4 years in the late 20th century, 3 of which caused significant environmental damage to waterways in the southeast. The Environmental Protection Agency alleged these were the result of gross negligence, and in 2000 filed a complaint for violations of the Clean Water Act against Colonial. They reached a settlement in 2003 which included a civil penalty to Colonial of $34 million. The settlement was governed by a consent decree by which Colonial would upgrade environmental protections at a cost of $30 million. In 2020, Colonial had one of the largest gasoline spills from a pipelines ever, at 1.2 million gallons, in a nature preserve in Huntersville, North Carolina. In 2021, Colonial was the subject of a malware cyber attack that caused a shutdown of their operations. Colonial consists of more than 5,500 miles of gasoline, home heating oil, aviation fuel and other refined petroleum products to communities and businesses throughout the South and Eastern United States. The main lines are 40 inches of fuel and provide a 45-day supply for local communities. Products move through the main lines at a rate of about 3 to 5 miles per hour. It generally takes from 14 to 24 days for a batch to get from Houston, Texas to the New York Harbor, with 18.5 days the average time. Colonial Pipeline's owners include Koch Industries, Royal Dutch Shell. 8 major oil companies began discussing a Gulf Coast to East Coast pipeline in 1956. On June 7, 1961, Sinclair Pipeline Co., Texaco Inc., Gulf Oil Co., American Oil Co., The Pure Oil Co., Phillips Petroleum Co., The Cities Service Co., and Continental Oil Co. filed incorporation papers in Delaware to establish Suwannee Pipeline Company, for the purpose of building a 22-inch line from Houston to the Baltimore-Washington area capable of delivering 300,000 barrels of refined products a day. Quote, P.15 Construction of Colonial Pipeline's original system started in 1961. In February 1962, the board of the Suwannee Pipeline Company met to rename the company. It chose Colonial Pipeline Company to reflect the number of colonial America states. The proposed pipeline would traverse from Houston, Texas to New York Harbor. Mobil joined the other 8 companies in 1962. P.16 On March 6, 1962, Colonial Pipeline Company formally announced its plans. A press release stated, the 9 companies launched the largest single privately financed construction project in the history of the United States. The initial investment by the 9 companies approached $370 million. R.J. Andress was named president of the newly formed company. P.16 Constructing the Colonial Pipeline required 600,000 tons of steel and trenching 16.7 million cubic yards of earth to bury the pipeline. It initially included 27 pumping stations to move refined product between Houston, Texas and Linden, New Jersey. P.16 A ceremonial groundbreaking near Atlanta, the pipeline's eventual headquarters, on June 20, 1962, was attended by U.S. Commerce Secretary Luther Hodges and company, city and state officials. P.2 On July 2, 1962, Colonial Pipeline Company solicited bids from contractors to build 15 segments of the pipeline's main line. Each segment averaged 100 miles and 200 to 300 workers. Work progressed at roughly 1 mile per day for each of the segments. P.19 The first lengths of pipe were delivered by rail, barge, and on specially constructed trailers to handle 80-foot double joints on the road. P.19 to 20 Construction started on August 1, 1962, in Mississippi. In December 1962, Ben Tex Lutie was named president of Colonial Pipeline Company. He had earlier served as vice president and general manager overseeing construction of the pipeline. P.20 engineers faced many challenges in constructing the pipeline. Chief among these was designing and constructing valves capable of opening and closing 2-ton steel gates in a timely manner to prevent the intermingling of different products. Electric motors took 3 minutes to close the massive gates. This allowed 2,400 barrels of product to intermix, rendering the product unusable. To reduce this intermixing, Colonial engineers designed a hydraulic system which reduced the intermixing to 120 barrels as changes were made in products shipped. P.21 The first line fill of Colonial began the morning of September 16, 1963 in Houston. It was shut down that day because of forecasts of a developing major storm. 2 days later Hurricane Cindy struck the Gulf Coast. P.21 product reached Greensboro, North Carolina for the first time in November 1963. P.22 Over the next several months, product was delivered to Marker,